done 4 evolutions. We've gone from the first field, the second field, the third field. We're in the 4th field. We're getting ready to move into the 5th field. And every time we always start over from the beginning. This is the first time. And they called it a quantum leap. And they also said that the reason you'll never find anything between Homo erectus and Homo sapien is because it was a quantum leap. And they said, so they talked about a pool of amoeba, and they talked about the critical mass. So the pool of amoeba are all swimming around being amoeba, you know. And they're all like, hey, I'm an amoeba. How are you an amoeba? Yeah, we're all amoeba. This is great. But at some point, all living creatures are imbued with the desire to be more than. Because they're God in form, there's a natural imbued nature that there must be more than this. There must be more than this. I know I'm more than this. So you get your little pool of amoeba, and they're all doing amoeba stuff. And finally, there's a critical mass where enough of the amoeba are like, yeah, there must be more than this. Now, does an amoeba have this critical thinking, or is it just a sense of itself? And then, boom, when you reach the critical mass, the amoeba change into the next evolution. It's the piece that evolution is missing, is that when we reach a critical mass where enough of that species goes, yeah, there must be more than this. There's a quantum leap. That species gets a new physiology, a new form, a new way of being, but the old amoebas are still there, right? It wasn't like every amoeba jumped into the next pool, because not all humans are going to reach that critical mass stage. These people will stay here, and there will be a quantum leap for us. So what the being said was, from Homo erectus to Homo sapien, you're never going to find that missing link, because it was a quantum leap between that to this. So we're about to make another quantum leap. We are moving from Homo sapien to Homo illuminus. And as we move to Homo illuminus, it is a yes moment. As we move to Homo illuminus, we will be a different type of species. Now, this different type of species will be able to move into this new world, this new experience. And then the ones that aren't able to do it, they're not chastised or punished or no good. They're just not ready to make that leap yet. So they will go back into a cycle where they get their lessons in growth. And how the being said it to me was, you wouldn't take a child from their entry-level education program and expect them to graduate out of the top of the program without going through the program. You know, there's a learning curve. You learn a little bit, you learn a little bit, you learn a little bit. Now in our world, we call it grades. Grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. We have to go through the process before you get to grade 12. And somebody says, oh yeah, you've learned enough to go to the next level. So that's where we are, is that the people that are leveling up and leveling up and leveling up, getting ready for this amazing shift, this quantum leap, but it's a vote. We have to say yes. This is what Fire the Grid has all been about. Like, you hit the bell, oh, you're not quite making it, but this guy over here is doing high frequency and you're going to get a little bit more of a push. So we have until February 21st, 2023 to get to the place that enough of us say yes at the same time. We're like the pool of amoebas. That we make a quantum leap and move out of this physiology and experience into the next physiology and experience. And the next one, as quantum physics moves us into Homo illuminus, we will be different beings. We won't be as dense. We won't need to eat, but we will still eat because it's so much pleasure. But I don't think we're going to eat food. I think that, like I talked about earlier with Jean-Luc Picard, you know, in the great Star Trek, like, oh, Earl Grey tea hot, right? So you get your tea. Now, is it all in our minds anyway, what we're eating and drinking? You know, so this is where things get really kind of like, are we in illusion where nothing's really real? Or are we in an illusion where everything is really real? We don't know these things. So that's why I say that everybody's experience is just a little bit different. But I do know that the only way to play in the next stage of this game, so you've done all the fields in Mario Kart, you're all the way up to the top, it's like, woohoo, what's next? Now, do you want to keep playing the game is the question. Are you ready to play the next level of Mario Kart? You know, are you ready to get a new suit? Are you ready to get a new little car? Woohoo! Let's jump into the new field. Well, the only way to play is to be high frequency. So there's this, again, another human-based type of story that a big portal opens. And there's two big centurion guards standing guard, welcome to the new world, welcome to the new earth, welcome, right? And this man shows up, and he's some sort of religious figure who has been teaching this for his whole life. He's, indoctrinated in dogma, right? And he's like, well, I'm here to go into the new world. And his wife and his children go up the stairs and go through the portal and go into the new world. And he goes up the stairs and he gets pushed right back. He goes, what's happening? And he goes up the stairs and he gets pushed right back. And he goes, what? Don't you know who I am? And the beings standing next to the portal say, well, sir, you're the wrong frequency. We're sorry, you can't enter. It's not you're a good guy or you're a bad guy. It's not you did good things or you did bad things. You know what the fair it says you got to be this high to ride? That's it. If you're not the right frequency, you cannot move through that doorway, that portal, that rainbow bridge. And the being showed it to me like this. If your energy field is moving rapidly like this, and the energy field of the planet is moving rapidly like this, as you come together, we can shift into a new state of being. But if you're going like this, because you're so low frequency, and the planet is going like this, trying to get through into that new field, it's just not going to happen. So my question to you is, do you want to play in the new field? If this is moot to you, you don't give a shit, I don't care either. You don't go that way. That's fine, that's up to you. But if you want to play in the new field, what do you have to do? How do I get to be available to this new field? People used to say to me, oh, why should I believe you? I don't give a shit if you believe me. I really don't. It's no bearing on me. The more of us that can come together and say yes together, the higher we can make the evolutionary jump the first time out of the gate. So do you want to start at like level 100, or do you want to start at level 900? Because the more of us saying yes, the more of us vibrating at high frequency, the more of us going, yeah, let's do this, we can jump the field to the highest field. This is what the beings said about easing our way. They want to help us into that new energy field. Now, what does a new energy field look like? I'm not completely sure. Dolores Cannon talks about the world pulling itself apart, and there's a picture of it. Have you guys seen that picture? Right? That's what's happening to us. We are a cell in the cosmic body. We are a cell in the cosmic body. It has no choice but at some point go through mitosis and pull itself apart. The fresh, happy new baby cell goes, woohoo! And it's at the top of the Mario Kart charts, and we're jumping into the new field, and we're high frequency. But this old cell has to go off and die. The beings told me that they were actually holding up the old grid. And that as the old grid started to crumble and we put the new one in place, that all of these things were kind of like holding up the field and keeping it energized and moving, because we needed it. We still need it for now. So they have been assisting us to keep this world grid moving and flowing until the end. And we're coming to the end. So the other thing is where the crop circles are. So the beings showed me what that was all about. Underneath the crop circles are tributaries. There's a main water source, and it takes the energy, because the energy of the water is the blood of this planet. She is a sentient being. So the beings were coming, and they said, we have been assisting you. This is all of us assisting you. And I was like, well, why? And they said, we're trying to keep the field viable and usable so that you can continue the process until you're ready to make the shift. Well, we're ready. We're there. I don't have any idea if it's 2 days, 2 years. I don't have that information. The last date I have as an energy date is October 29th, 2028. There's 3 types of people. The New Age metaphysical people who this is not hard for them to conceive. The second people were dogma-based people who already had religion. And if that's the case, if you believe in God, if you pray to God, if you're working with God, why is this not possible? Because God is omnipotent. Everything is possible. But they said the largest number of people on the planet right now were fence sitters. They called us fence sitters. And fence sitters were good people that would do something if they knew what the heck to do. But most of us don't know what the heck to do. And the systems that were there for us, religion and the different things in school and education and stuff we were taught, the things that we had as the building blocks of our life have deteriorated. They're not there. People don't feel connected to their churches and to their communities like that anymore. We have to build new communities and build new ideas and concepts. So these fence sitters were the largest number of people, right? So this is only an opportunity for fence sitters. There's a ton of people dead asleep. Dead asleep. If you heard this conversation, they would say, oh yeah, there goes all the woo-woo crackpots. And that's okay, as you wish. I honor your journey, but you're not going to make that evolutionary leap this time. Now they may go into like 1,000 life cycle, because the reincarnation thing is very real. We are recycled over and over and over as we learn. Now, the people that are stuck in this kind of sense, that's the experiences they wrote into their field. We're back to, you've decided. Okay, so back in 2006, the beings told me that there was a pandemic coming. Now, I thought they meant a pandemic like the Black Plague. I thought it was going to be like a serious all-out pandemic where it was going to hit and everybody was going to die and that type of thing. Because the word pandemic, that's what it meant to me. And they said that it wouldn't be a pandemic, that it would be frequency illness. And that frequency, the frequency of the planet and the frequency of the people were going to be the problem, but it would appear like a pandemic. Remember I said about being 857 hertz? That's where we want to be up over the lip so that we can jump into the next field, the 5th field. So this frequency illness, this pandemic that's happening is sadness, despair, discouraged, separation, all the things that humans don't do well with. So what's happening to us, and we can get into a debate about why it's happened or who's done it, but guess what? That's all low frequency too. It's here, it's happening. People are sad, discouraged, fearful. People are really fearful. So all of those energy signatures are low frequency. So if you get into the debate of why it happened, if you get into the debate of what's going to happen, if you're wringing your hands, I call it water cooler talk. Oh my God, did you see what happened? Oh my God, did you see what's going on? So the beings a long time ago when the Japanese nuclear plant went off, looking for the word. So I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. And the beings were really quick to come and say, do not dive into that pool. Do not go into that wringing your hands with fear and anxiety. So what they wanted me to teach at that point was to see that as symptoms of a world in chaos. Now, I send you my love. Remember I told you we have portals in our hands and feet? I send you my love. I send the people of Japan my love. I send the entire region my heartfelt hope everything goes really good, really fast, and things change. But I can't join you in the shit puddle. I can't. Because if I do, I'm low frequency with you. and I'm not helping the grid at all. So when we see chaos, destruction, trauma, and torment, we have to see it, we have to send it love, we have to send it acknowledgement that it's my heart's intent that you be high frequency as soon as possible, that you be well and healthy as soon as possible. But I can't join you in your fear. So I have to see it as a world in chaos, and turn from it. And then I have to turn from it, and I have to find joy and gratitude. Because if I want to help that incident, I have to help the grid. I might not be able to do anything in the physical form right now. I can write a check and send you $50. That's in the doing you create the reality too. But I can't go over there and fix that. So that's where we are with this particular disease and all the things that are happening around it and all the chaos about should I or shouldn't I do this, do I do that. It's all low frequency. You have to see it as symptoms of a world in chaos. You have to see it as a pandemic of frequency issues. More and more and more and more people are living down in they're living in this low vibration field of fear and not enough and anger, judgment, criticism, because the more afraid we get, the more we throw it out. Oh, there's something wrong with you, or you're doing something I don't like, or you're doing something I don't like. And now you go lower and lower and lower. So this is a pandemic of frequency illness. Now, if I was going to send you an instruction as how to fix this, it would be to spend time in your own heart thinking about the things you love about being human and saying thank you. It's about getting your frequency out of 200 hertz. But there's a field, I describe it as a bounce field, because you're trying to come up through that 500 mark to get into love and gratitude and compassion. And I'll tell you what, that field, you've got to make quite a good push to push up through it. It's part of why we have so much depression. Once you get down, trying to get the oomph to push up through the field into the high frequency. So low frequency, greed, despair, sadness, I'm not good enough, I'm a big loser. Your brain tells you all the time what's wrong with you. So you have to find a way to say, no, it's okay, it's okay. Let's just look at what's happy right now. And just seeing the deer in your yard, right? Thank you, thank you, thank you. So it's about practicing getting that energetic field up. So if you were at the doctor, then they put you, oh, look at that, your field's up to 600 hertz, you must be feeling better. Because low field frequency illness looks like the flu. And guess what? We're in the middle of this big flu. Well, low frequency energy field is about this, and remember I said it's hard to push up through the field anyway. So you got to really go looking over here for something high frequency. Now, writing stuff is really important. If you write out, I am happy, I'm joyful, I'm so thankful for, because it's a head, hand, and heart. It's a unified field that you're doing. In the doing, you create the reality. You're engaging the head where we use thought, and we're using heart where we're saying, yes, there's more to me than this. So we practice lifting our energy field up. And what's happening right now, I think, is the darkness putting lids on things. Because the darkness has its own agenda. I don't know what it is because I don't deal with the darkness. But Evan and I both had the light and the dark. And they're having a war for the world. Now, when the beings talk to us about coming together now, they use words like the light brigade. And funny enough, a brigade is a military term. And it's about being in 3s and 6s. And it's like kind of odd. I'm like, why are you talking about military stuff? Because we are an army of light. There is an army of light here, and there's a light army coming. And if we want to be part of that, if we want to join in and shift and change these things, we have to be willing to say, yes, I know I'm a supernatural being. I don't need to know all the rest. And yes, I am turning towards the light in all of my choices. One of the most common questions I've ever gotten is, oh, well, if I get to go to the new world, do my family get to go to the new world? People have talked about, oh, well, children are innocent. Are they going? I don't know these things. I do know that if somebody's not finished their journey, you can't force them into your journey, right? So it depends on where somebody lives on that line. It depends on whether or not they're able. Now, tons and tons of people have no real deep spirituality, but are happy, happy, happy people. They're kind, they're compassionate, they're giving. You know, are they going to slip right on in through? Maybe. Because obviously it's about being high frequency. And high frequency people are happy, joyful, giving, compassionate, caring people. They don't necessarily need any spirituality. So it's about where you live as to whether or not you'll be able to move into the new field. But what I was told was that if people move into this field and have to go through this set of lessons because they're not finished, they're not ready to make the ascension, there will be no loss or grief. That we will not shift and feel loss and grief for losing them, and when they go that way, they will not feel loss and grief for losing us. And I don't know if it's because we will disappear from the timeline, or something will happen so that we were never there in the first place. So how much of all of this is science fiction, Captain Kirk beam me up Scotty stuff, you know, and how much is Neo Matrix? You know, we're in this illusionary world that once we wake up to it, we can do anything. We can be all powerful, we can fly. You know, he zips around the world in 30 seconds type of thing. These are all things that can be fun to discuss. The same way that all the negative things that are happening right now, if you discuss them, I call them the water cooler talk, you lower your frequency, right? We get up here and we start, oh, am I going to be able to wear clothes? You know, am I going to get to have food? Is somebody coming with me? So these are all great things to talk about, and there's tons of books written, and you can sit down and have a great intellectual conversation, and you can enjoy the conversation. As long as you're being high frequency with that conversation, none of it hurts. But as soon as you find yourself in despair and sadness over the conversations, then you've lowered your own frequency. And as soon as you start to lower your own frequency, it's hard to get back up into that over 500 hertz. So I'm not sure who's going to get to go. If you're 857 hertz, you're going. So anyway, they talked about 2012. Everybody was talking about 2012. Oh, the Mayans said 2012, and there's going to be this huge event. Well, the first thing they offered, and they always say, for your guidance and consideration. I was like, yeah, just for you to think about. They're like, you know, the calendar on this planet has changed about 20 times. And I'm like, oh yeah. And they said, so for your guidance and consideration, perhaps this is not the day you think it is. I was like, oh yeah. Because come on, they're the Mayan, and they were in like 889 BC when they did this, right? So basically, the world has been coming around, and this event is happening, and then 2012 was supposed to be in the middle of some sort of sunburst, shift, the type of thing. And they said, so what they wanted us to know was as the world had come around, it was like the world was moving through, how do I describe it? Okay, the world's been coming around the galactic sun, and it comes up, and there's a field right here, and it's made out of spider web. So the Earth is coming through, boomity boom, boomity boom, and as it moves through that spider web encases itself all over, and it shifts into the new field. The other thing they described it as was throwing a boiled egg, hard-boiled egg, into a bowl of semi-set Jell-O. Right? You go, and the egg comes in, and it closes behind itself. You don't see the hole, right? Because the semi-set Jell-O now sets, and the egg is suspended in the new field. Well, that's what's happening for us. We have come through that energetic field, and we are now encasing ourselves in a whole new plasma field. So right now, the energy of the air is very, if you run your hand through it, it's air. But as we move into the new dimensional, the fifth field, the field is going to be much more aqueous. Aqueous, like we're water-based beings, and the air is very, like you can feel the difference between you and the air. So as we move into the new field, this field is going to be much more like us. It's why it's going to be so much easier for us to be in it. So everything about us is ready to move into this new field, like the egg in the jello, and it's going, and we've all been encompassed in it. So as we move into it, we're charging that new field. So every time we come together and do Fire the Grid, every time we come together at all, we're constantly programming that new field with what we think and feel. So be careful what you're thinking and feeling. And it's really important right now, between now and the 2023, to pay attention to what are you programming. Everything about us is some sort of program. We're some sort of program. We're like satellite dishes to a mainframe computer, with a huge Ethernet cord that goes right into our third chakra. So everything's programming, and we want to make sure that the programming that we're creating with our mind and with our heart is high frequency. Because high frequency is the only way to get into the new field, and it's the only way to play the new game, to get into the new leveled up Mario Kart world. So that's what I call the egg in the jello. When we die, this is part of how this makes sense. When we die, what you need to come and get you will make sense. So if you need Jesus to show up and come and say, hey, I'm here, come on with me. If you need Nanny to come, or Poppy, or your dad, or Buddha, or whoever you need to come, that's who will come to help you transition to the other side. Now the interesting thing is, it'll still be a light being, but it will wear a suit that will bring you comfort. So the beings have talked about portals, rainbow bridges, shimmering walls of energy that you're going to be able to move through, and of course the kind of rapture where somebody just takes you. Now, if we die and have the experience of getting to choose what we want to help us transition, then it makes sense that if we're transitioning from the fourth field to the fifth field, it will show up the way you need it to show up. So Evan and I have had numerous conversations about, he goes, I'm not sure I believe all your woo-woo. And I said, well, if you're in your living room and a giant big, 12-foot portal shows up and it's like, wow, wow, wow. And he goes, oh yeah. I said, go inside. Because if it shows up, you don't need much more proof than that. And I will be on the other side. Because the portal, I think, will only be seen by the people high enough frequency to use it. I don't think everybody's going to go, wow, look, there's a big portal there, and only one person be able to go through it. Again, who knows though? So open your heart to whatever shows up. Work with it. If whatever shows up for you. Really cool story. And I never knew if it was a story or an event. So I saw this massive spaceship. And down the side of the spaceship, it was kind of like, Captain Kirk. And down the side of the spaceship was G.R.A.C.E, G.R.A.C.E, the Galactic Relocation Atmospheric Cryonics Environment. And I was like, oh my God. And there was 144,000 beings on the ship, all in cryostasis, waiting to be put back on the Earth. And I was like, is this a story? Is this a science fiction? Am I going to write this book? And they said, well, we woke you first up to go out and ding the bell so that you could wake everybody else up. I said, but why would I go out and ring the bell? And they said, because you volunteered to do it. I was like, oh, Jesus, I got to be more careful what I say yes to. But this big, massive ship, but there was more than one. And they were all big cryonic ships, and they were housing life beings, humans, waiting for the atmosphere of Earth to be acceptable so that they could be put back down. And I was like, holy mackerel, is this some sort of You know, are they going to take us and then we're going to be in a cryostasis for a period of time while the Earth heals itself, and then they're going to just put us back? Well, at this point, I'm just like, well, what a cool story, because I don't know. But I figured I was going to write a book, you know, a science fiction book about these big ships. But there's a whole bunch of them, and my job was to go, ding, 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 hey, wake up! So Fire the Grid is not only about, you know, unifying and pulsing the grid. It's about, hey, wake up. Hey, pay attention. Are you awake enough to have this discussion? You know, are you awake enough to understand what we're talking about? Because if you are, when the day comes, call out. Now, if you miss the day, you miss the day. Call out every other time. Like, don't miss your moment. And I'm really convinced that the big one in February 21st, 2023 is important. Write something down, stick it on a Post-it note, stick it on your forehead, and go to bed. But don't miss the day to say, yes, I'm in. Now, I'll tell you what might be happening with respect to natural disasters and floods and the things that I've been seeing. I had a do not talk to me clause. So the very first time I saw the earthquake in the Atlantic that caused the tsunami, I put a do not, the same way I said no dead people, I said do not talk to me about natural disasters. Don't talk to me about things that I'm going to have to be concerned about somebody's life, or concerned about their children, or people asking me, oh, is there going to be a natural disaster? So it could be that they're just tiptoeing around the edges with that. But basically, we are going to have a lot of Earth chaos. Now, if we're in the last stages of this cell pulling itself apart, there's a pulsing move to that. And you know that the Earth has to be affected. Like right now, I know there's a bunch of volcanoes that are still going off, and there's issues. Now, I don't look at it, I don't read about it, I don't ask about it, because I know it's there. There's nothing I can do about it except send it love. So if we're in that last little section, as the Earth pulls itself apart into two separate, the old Earth and the new Earth, well, that little section, as we come, right, there's got to be Earth events happening. It makes only sense. Earthquakes, tidal waves, you know, shaking, moving, bridges coming down, things happening. Now, again, if we go into that, we are going to go into fear. There's no way to change that. If we start to talk about the traumas and the chaos that might be coming, and this might be why I see quick images, but I don't remember them, because my job is not to tell you to be fearful. My job is actually to say, when you see it, you go, oh yeah, symptoms of a world in chaos. Of course there's earthquakes and things happening, because the Earth is in the final stages of shifting and becoming something new. So if you see it, if you hear about it, if you see it on YouTube and everybody's talking about it, give it a little pulse of love. There's nothing you can do. And if you dive into it, you will suffer for it. You will become low frequency. And remember what I said, once you go down too low in your frequency, there's that kind of rubbery roof. You really gotta take a running leap at it and just push up through it. Because what happens is, yeah, I think I can do it. And you go, I can't. And we do not want to be depressed right now. We want to be happy. And don't say want, because that means you're lacking. We choose to be happy. So right now it's like, yeah, I see the symptoms of the world in chaos. As a matter of fact, the biggest thing I think to say to you is choose to be brave. Choose to be fearless. Oh yeah, that's happening. Of course that's happening. Well, that's what happens when the world pulls itself apart. When we go out into our other world, there's only two constants. Each one of us is a note in the symphony of the universe. So you get two things. You get a light emittance, or a beam, or something that's measurable. It's light. It's your light and your sound. So every one of us is a note in the symphony of the universe. So your sound might be ooh, and yours might be ee, but all these sounds together make up the symphony of the universe. So remember I told you about the the crop circles. So the crop circles started, X amount of years ago, probably 30 or 40 years ago, when the extraterrestrial stuff started in Roswell. And so what they said was that the beings were coming down here, and because we were having so many Earth shifts and kind of chaos and movement and stuff while we were getting ready for the next set of shifts, these ships were coming. Now, I never saw a ship as in tink, tink, tink. It wasn't a metal ship. It was the Earth, the energy field coming up off the field of wheat or whatever they were over. And it was enormous, enormous, big circular shaped field. And it was thick. And they explained to me that these ships had come down to pulse energy into the water table. And you could see it was very Stephen King-like. The energy would start to rattle on the outsides of the field, and then it would all come into the center of this, what looked like a ship, and then it would go, and it would make this massive sound, and it would pulse the energy right into the earth, and you could see this concentrated pulse being pushed into the earth, and the steam that was coming off this ship literally steamed the grain or whatever the field was made of, and it lay down and it formed a symbol. And it was like, this is where the water tables are all coming together underneath this point. And we have put this pulse of energy into the earth, and it's now going to be taken around the planet as a healing, as a sustenance to keep everything moving. So I saw this ring of beings holding space around the planet, and they were just holding this light energy. But there was also a bunch of spaceships, and they were making sounds. And it's so much like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Wah, 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 wah. So the only true things that are truthful is light and sound. Everything else is a manifestation to give you a suit, to give you something tangible to play in or to work with. So they are pulsing sounds. They are here helping us with everything. They're holding light for us. They're pulsing us with sound. Sometimes I get this rattle in my chest like somebody has beaten a drum, and I can feel the vibration. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. So the new grid was built, and it was put up over the old grid. And we didn't build it. This is all part of a system that's being built for the illusion or for whatever we are. I often joke, are we in a giant holodeck? Right? And they're going to flip the switch and everybody's going to wake up and go, what a ride, let's do it again. And I'm going to go, no thanks, send me home. So I think Drunvalo talks about this too, but the system of temples and pyramids that have been built, and they are everywhere. They are everywhere. They were supporting the energy grid that was the original play field. It was the original field that we were playing in. But as with everything in time and space, it starts to decay. It needs to be repaired or replaced. So this grid was replaced. And so far the grid was talking about us pulsing that grid into life, bringing our own special energetic voices together to pulse our energy into that grid and bring it to life. Now that old grid, I don't know if it's completely gone. My sense is it's pretty decayed and disintegrated. There's not much left to it. So interesting enough, do the temples now hold up the new one? But my sense is that's not the case, that the new grid is higher and bigger. It's almost like the first grid was made out of wood, and the new grid is made out of titanium. So it's going to last a long, long time, but we are right now programming that new grid with the joys that we want to bring. Evan always jokes, he goes, well, got to have Bugattis, got to have, Murcielagos, because he's a car dude, right? And all he wants is that we can have cars on the new planet that have no emissions and no gas, and we can all drive them. So I'm like, okay, Evan, that's good. And hamburgers. So you wanted to ask Evan about his joy. He's definitely fast cars and hamburgers. Like, come on, life is simple. So everything you think, feel, and do right now is programming that new grid. It's programming you too, but it's programming that grid. So it's be careful what you're thinking. Be careful what you're doing. Be careful what you're wishing for. Okay, so the old grid that I knew about that was being held up and supported by the energetic. So those temples have a light beam that come right up out of them. Like this light beam it's literally like a hand going up. So if we were holding up that grid, this big light beam comes up out of Angkor Wat, the temples in Giza, the Chichen Itza, they all have this light beam that comes right up out. Now, I used to think it was coming down. Like when I would see it, it was like, oh, is that light coming out of the temple or is that light coming into the temple? But I think once it got engaged, I recognized that that big light beam was holding something up. And it was holding up this old grid that was decaying and that it was no longer viable and that we were going to lose our system. It's like the holodeck. Somebody pulls a fuse out and we can't play in the holodeck because it's broken. So this grid was housing our bubble, our system that we can play in. And because it was decaying, these temples were built to hold it up and keep it in place until the new one could be built, charged, and ready. So that old grid, my sense even now sitting here with it and looking, it's like, that's gone. It's lost. Now, the temples are still here. The temples are still pulsing light. And one of the things that I saw was Chichen Itza had this massive beam of light come right up out of the temple, and it just, and it sent sparks of light all over the earth grid. And it was like, wow, cool, okay, but what is it? I don't know. It's a pulse of light. These beings have been helping us for a long time. They're continuing to help us, and they want to help us get into that new playground, into that new field. That's their only agenda.